What's going on, guys? Ultra Stasio here with FlytPath.com. And before we jump into that full list of things you might want to know about the DJI Mavic 3, just want to quickly talk to you about the flight cases that I created a little while ago, and I do have now back in stock, ready for holiday shipping. I have a case that's made for the DJI Mavic Mini, which is made to hold the Mini just like that, as well as the Air 2 or Air 2S. I do have a separate case for this one, and of course the remote control. So if you do have the newer remote control, which is just like this, I have a case that holds that one specifically. Now I did design these cases with the traveler in mind, so if you do want something that has good protection that you're able to now toss into your backpack or your carry-on, make it nice and small and compact for you to bring along with you, especially if you don't want to carry the big sling bag or a hard case. I made these specifically for these size drones and accessories to be easily grab and go, and not just that, of course they are a standard bag, so you are able to put a bunch of other things in here if you have action cam accessories, memory cards, and hard drives. That's pretty much what I use them for if I don't use my drone. They do come in 3 different colors. I have camo, black, and this gunmetal gray, and they are limited stock, of course. Like I mentioned, I just wanted to give you a little plug in there because we do have the holiday seasons coming up. So I do want to make sure that if you are looking at getting one of these cases, possibly place your order in a little bit earlier so not worrying about shipping times around the holidays. And as far as holiday savings go, I am going to be offering free shipping here in the US. Make sure you guys use that link and that code down below in the video description. And now back to some of the things you might want to know about the DJI Mavic 3. So I've been flying a DJI Mavic 3 for the past month now, and as I've been flying, I normally just kind of keep a little notepad on my phone of things that I either like or don't like, things I think that DJI did really well, you know, things that are a little bit new compared to something like the Mavic 2 Pro or the Air 2S or the Mini, as well as things I think they can improve on. And I'm not going to go too in depth about things that are in the RC Pro. I have a separate video for that, as well as I'm not going to touch upon all the features that are not available yet on the Mavic 3. When DJI did release the Mavic 3, they did let us know that there's a bunch of features, and I'm sure we've talked about it multiple times in these videos, about things that are going to be coming to the Mavic 3, such as all the intelligent flight modes, some of the photo modes. So I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'll keep that for a separate one. So I just want to talk to you about what we currently have today, what are the things that I like and don't like about the drone. And of course, when we do get more firmware updates and RC Pro updates, I will make videos on those changes as well. All right, so let's go down the list, a little rapid fire. Let's just get right into it. First thing you'll notice is the new holster for the Mavic 3. At first, you know, it is kind of funky, you know, just something you got to get used to. But the main reason why I actually do like this thing is because it does cover everything. In the past, when our drones, we will normally have a gimbal cover, then you might have a prop, you know, separate accessory to hold the bottom props, and then you also have a separate accessory to hold the top props together. Here, they have everything built into one. It does look kind of funky, but I do like what it does. It covers the front camera, it covers the gimbal, the sensors, keeps your props on the top nice and tucked away underneath these little hooks here, as well as on the bottom, covers your propellers, your motors, all the sensors here. So all the way around, your drone is protected, especially when you're in transit. The next thing I'm glad DJI added is the ability to charge your drone through the USB-C port. This is definitely things I've talked about in multiple drone releases, and the only one that you're able to do that really is the Mini. The Air 2S, it would have been nice if you're able to do that. But if you didn't know, you can actually charge the drone battery by plugging in that USB-C port right here on the very back, using that battery brick or using a higher powered USB-C plug. The next thing I'm happy about that DJI did is that when you shut the DJI Mavic 3 down, the gimbal and camera actually lock in place. As you can see here, my drone is off and the camera doesn't flop around like you do here on the Air 2S. I know that my camera and my gimbal aren't sitting there in the back kind of moving all the way around. It's good to just know that even while it's turned off, it does lock in place there, and it also helps when you're trying to put on the holster. This is what it looks like with the camera on. As you can see, of course, it is keeping it nice and stable. If I power it off, and you can hear a little click, and there you go. Now my camera and gimbal, nice and locked. The next feature that we have on the Mavic 3 that I didn't see on the Air 2S is that you do have now the ability to turn on and off the front arm LED lights. So these lights right here on the very front, if you wanted to either keep them on, you can actually keep them on in the app, or now they have the ability to switch it to auto. So when it's in auto and you hit record, the lights actually turn off. Now, the main reason why you might want to have those off is because if you are flying at night and you're maneuvering your drone around, you can actually sometimes see in your footage that red light if you're turning certain angles. So when you are recording, you always kind of want to turn those lights off so that you don't accidentally have some of that light leakage onto your footage. And if you put it into auto mode, now it's in auto. If I hit record, you can actually see the lights turn off. And then when I stop recording, there you go, they come back on. This next feature is something I like, and if you've flown a Mavic 2 Pro and I believe one or two other drones in the past, you'll be familiar with this one, but you do have the ability to touch the screen and drag across the screen and move the camera up and down, left to right. So if you just press and hold on the screen, you will see now I'm able to adjust my gimbal up and down. The difference here is that you don't have that much range from left to right. On the previous Mavic 2 Pro, you can actually turn that camera pretty far over left to right, but here on the Mavic 3, the range is very limited. You're only able to move it just a tiny bit. Now, for those that do a little bit more post-processing on their videos, they do have the ability to shoot D-Log on the Mavic 3. Now, I actually do like the D-Log on the Mavic 3. I think it's a little bit more flat than some of the previous models, but the thing is, if you didn't know, when you switch it over into D-Log, you do only have a couple options as far as adjusting your ISO. So if you go into Pro mode, your ISO options, you only have the ability to switch it from 400 and 800. You don't have the full range. And go back to normal, 264, 265, you do have the full range of ISO. The one thing I did see missing on here is the ability to have that toggle for a color mode while you're in D-Log. I believe they have that color mode on another previous model and they don't have it here. So I would have liked to see the ability to have that toggle for color mode when you have D-Log on. It just gives you a quick preview of what it might look like if you were to add a light grade to it. They don't have it here, but I think that might be something they can add in a firmware update. Now this is the Cine Mavic 3, and this one actually has the 1 terabyte internal hard drive. And I just forgot to talk about this in a previous video because people thought that a lot of the drones or like the Mavics only had internal storage. So this might be a small thing, but yes, you can add external micro SD cards. It's actually right below the USB-C plug port right there where you're able to insert a micro SD card. I'm not exactly too happy about the location of it because it gets a little tricky. You can actually pop it, but the thing is to actually grab it out. Pretty hard to grab that out of this area. Would have been nice if they just had it in a more standard area for easier access because it is kind of deep in there. And speaking of the SD card, one question I did get is that, am I able to write ProRes to the micro SD card if I got, say, a higher capacity SD card? Because I know that this one can accept, I believe, higher capacity 512, 1 terabyte, I think even a 2 terabyte micro SD card. I think they have that. I believe it can take a pretty large SD card in here. But the thing is, once you switch ProRes on the app itself, it will automatically switch the storage location from SD card over into the internal SSD. And staying on the lines of that SSD or that internal 1 terabyte storage, while it's great to have in there because if you are shooting at ProRes, you're shooting at these huge files, so it needs to be able to write really quickly to that SSD card. The one downfall I did see with that is that you're not able to take out or have a detachable SSD card in case you wanted to swap out the SD card for another one and then get this thing back up in the air, download that footage, and then continue shooting. The one thing I did notice when I was shooting a lot of the files is that those files are huge. I was downloading 100 gigs, 50 gigs, 200 gigs at a time. And the thing is, you have to have also enough battery storage to be able to download that footage. So it really would have been nice to have some sort of way to remove that SSD, swap it out. That way you're able to then take footage that might have been a really good shot that you got. You don't want to lose it. You want to be able to pull that footage off, put in a new 1 terabyte back in there, get up and flying again while you're downloading in the background. That would have been a really nice option, especially for those power commercial users, and get back up and flying with a clean SSD drive and not have to worry about it, because that's the thing. If you shoot a lot, you also need a lot of battery in order for you to offload that footage to your computer. The one thing I do like about the new Mavic 3 is their new charging brick. And I just like the fact that it's all in one and it's compact and super small. I really hope moving forward we are sticking to something like this. I hope we're past the days of having those massive power bricks. I do like this one right here. It's super compact. Like I said, you can actually charge directly to your drone, plug this into the hub, and it also still has an extra USB port here so you can hook up your remote control, charge that while you're in the field. Now, if you did get the Cine package, you do get the Mavic 3, and of course you get the new RC Pro or the smart controller. You do not get the standard remote control, which you would normally get on the standard package or the Flymore combo. But I just tested this one out. This is actually my DJI Mini 2 remote, and also I tested out with my Air 2 remote. There was a firmware update on the remote control. You are now able to pair the remote control from the Mini 2 as well as the Air 2S. You can use that if you currently had those drones. You could pair that now with the Mavic 3. So it definitely is a nice option in case you already had the Mini 2 or the Air 2S and you had this remote control, just to know as a backup for the Mavic 3 that you can actually use this remote control. Now, of course, one of the biggest requests that I think everyone is expecting is that the new RC Pro ideally will be backwards compatible. Hopefully it should work with the Mini 2, the Air 2S, the Mavic 2 Pro. We have no confirmation at this point. On their website, it does say that there's, future, it should work for future other aircrafts. That doesn't mean it's gonna work with previous ones at the moment. Hopefully it'll be very similar to what they did with the smart controller and the Mavic 2 Pro, where it was, really made for that, but also ended up working for the Mini 2 Air 2S. The one thing I do like about the Mavic 3 is that the filter system on here is actually pretty easy. I was, used to some of the older ones where some of the filters were very difficult to take on and off, especially if you're in the field. Some of them you had to get use rubber gloves or something like that just to kind of break that seal. But DJI on the Mavic 3 made it really simple to put on and off, to click in on and off the filters. If you're using filters on your drone, it makes it pretty simple to get them on and off versus some of the previous models. Now, for those that are coming from the Mavic 2 Pro, this is nothing new. Having an adjustable aperture is definitely a good way for you to, really fine tune your exposure while you're up in the air. But a lot of people I would think that are coming from something like a Mini 2, Air 2, Air 2S over into the Mavic 3 have not really experienced using an adjustable aperture. So for those that don't know, you are able to adjust the aperture from an f2.8 all the way up to an f11, or close it down to an f11. In the past with the previous drones, if you really wanted to fine tune your exposure, get your shutter speed dialed in, you're gonna always need to swap out that ND filter for different strengths, depending on what type of look you're going for. The one thing I did notice with the Mavic 3 is the speed of it is actually bumped up a little bit, as well as that wind resistance. Now, I'm not normally out there trying to chase cars or anything like that, but having a little bit quicker of a drone gives you a little bit more dynamic movement up in the air. So if you're used to flying with something like a Mini and you are moving up, or an Air 2, just know that you do have very similar speeds as like a Mavic 2 Pro, where you are now able to move and get just more sweeping dynamic shots. And that speed definitely helps create that mood and that look. Now, jumping back to the remote control. Now, if you got the standard version of the Mavic 3, you got this right here, which is that remote control that you would get, very similar to how the Mini 2 and the Air 2S is. You don't get the RC Pro. That's the one you get with the Cine bundle. Now, unfortunately, you do get the same remote as you would with the Mini 2 and the Air 2S. And that's definitely unfortunate because of the fact that the Mavic 3 is such a more robust system, and you're kind of limited on the remote control that they included on here. Now, at bare minimum, I think what DJI could have done, because of the fact that you are, investing into a larger and more expensive platform that has a lot more features, was just to give us a few different things. Even a 5D button, very similar to how we have on the RC Pro, adding even a 5D button, or at the bare minimum, giving you a custom 1 and 2 here, which we have here, which we actually have on some of the older drones. That way you're able to quickly access some of the features here that you have on the Mavic 3 that you don't have on previous models. And also, at least maybe just give us a new shell color, like match the shell color with the drone. That would have been like at least that, just to differentiate The remotes would have been nice. Now, when it comes to distance, a lot of people were kind of confused with the distance as far as what it's rated for. The DJI Mavic 3 is rated for that 15 kilometers using the OcuSync 3 Plus, but that is coming from this, using the RC Pro remote control. You don't have that same range on the standard version if you're using this remote. So a lot of people were asking if you would get the same distance. No, you don't get the same distance with this remote control. You do have that rated distance if you're using the RC Pro with your Mavic 3. And speaking of internal storage, if you were to get the standard bundle, if you were to get the non-Cine version, both of those, the Flammer Combo and the standard, come with 8 gigs internal storage. 8 gigs, just, you can't really get much on 8 gigs. I believe you can only shoot about 5 minutes worth of 5K footage on an 8 gig card, which is not even 8 gigs or not 8 gigs internal. I think usable, it's only about 7 point something gigs. So not having a higher internal storage is kind of a letdown, especially if you were to even move up to the Fly More combo. It would have been nice maybe if you got the basic combo, give you 8 or 16, move up to the Fly More, give you a little bit more incentive for the internal storage. Maybe it's a 64, 32, 64, something along those lines. But it's definitely a huge contrast between 8 gigs on the standard, then you jump up to the Cine and you have a 1 terabyte on the Cine. Now, when we jump over to the camera, we do have that 20 megapixel photo option. We have it in JPEG and RAW on the main camera. The one thing that on the TELE lens, you do not have RAW capabilities, you only have JPEG. Hopefully in a future update, DJI can now change it so that at least we do have the ability to shoot JPEG and RAW on that TELE lens, but at the moment it is only in JPEG. Also, when it comes to the TELE lens, I know a lot of people kind of, don't feel like it's that usable, and I think it's definitely a great option to have. I don't think you're really gonna zoom in really, really far in when in Explore mode and think you're gonna use that footage for any, like production or commercial use. I really do think it's great to have as an option to use. And I don't know if people realize how stable the drone is, because when you're zoomed in that far, any micro movements of the drone or any of a camera would really show. I just think it actually shows you how good the stabilization and the stability of the camera is, being zoomed in that far and still being somewhat pretty stable. Now, if you want the best usable footage, you're gonna wanna keep it at that 1:4 zoom range. And then if you do switch it to the TELE lens, you're gonna wanna shoot at that 7 times, because that's where it starts at. Anything after that 7 times, you're gonna go into that digital zoom where you start losing that quality. With one of the recent updates, they did add in that slow motion feature, the 4K at 120. The thing is, you have to actually select on the video icon, and then you have to go not into where the video is, you actually have to click on the slow-mo option right below it. When you click on that slow-mo option, then you now see that I can shoot at 4K at 120. I would like, even though I do like the fact you can just quickly get to that slow-mo, I would like still the ability to change that setting in the video settings down below. So if I'm in Pro mode and if I go into 4K, I don't have that ability to go into 120. It only gives me the option to go up to 60 frames a second. I don't see why they just can't let me go all the way up to 420 if it's available there. I have to go back out, go into that slow-mo option, and then there it is. Now, the one thing I kind of wish they brought over from the Air 2S is the metal clip in the battery. Now, I do know that there are also some sensors here on the Air 2S that I believe are reading this thing to know if your battery is, loose or dislodged, to give you some sort of warning through the app, which I get that. But there's definitely like a sense of security knowing that you hear this like loud click when you drop in a battery into a Air 2S versus the Mavic 3. But I did feel like sometimes when I would go out in the field and I was swapping out my batteries, I always felt like I had to just kind of just push it in there to hear it a lot louder, because it just felt kind of soft to me when I was putting the batteries in versus something like this on the Air 2S where you kind of know it's in there. And there it is, guys. Just wanted to give you a full rundown. These are just notes that I've been taking as I've been flying with my Mavic 3, things I like, things I think they can improve on. There's also a ton of things in the RC Pro that I'm gonna be talking to you about, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel if you wanna see a bunch of features in here that you might not have in some of the previous models. Of course, as I continue flying the drone, I'll make another list and just keep it ongoing. Also, once we have that new firmware update with more features being released, of course, I'll be coming out with those tests and more videos around all of the updates. coming from DJI for the Mavic 3. As always, if you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos. This is Ultra Anastasio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.